Welcome all of you. And today we have quite an interesting topic for our discussion, which is the best practices and innovation in driving insights with data. Since in the previous presentation, Piyush had referred to the MIT professor Tom Davenport quite a few times. So let me kick off today's panel discussion with a quote from the same professor. He says, "It's hard to get good data about the future. So we have to use the data from the past. And if the past is no longer a guide to the future, we are going to have a tough time doing any sort of predictive analytics." Now, anyone who's using data from the last year to develop predictive models for the future will find this quote apt in the current times. In fact, it has been alleged that many organizations switched to descriptive analytics and put a hold on machine learning models, which were using data from 2020. So with this thought, Rafiq, let me start with you. And my question to you is, what changes have you brought in, how and where you used data analytics for your business as you recovered from the pandemic? And after recovery, have you switched back to pre-pandemic ways of using data analytics, or you're gonna be on the new ways?
Great, thank you for that, Shailesh, and thank you everyone. It's good to be here and talk to you. I'm part of a PepsiCo Group called Demand Accelerator. This was established a few years ago in the US, but globally about a year and a half ago. Our aim is to unlock granular growth through development of commercialization and innovative new data, media, marketing, and merchandising solutions. So our aim at PepsiCo is really to generate smiles for our consumers, and we realized that that was an opportunity to better integrate our commercial teams like sales, go-to-market, and operations to ensure that we're engaging with consumers and marketing and in-store experiences that are highly personalized. So this last year has been a year of tremendous change, right? Consumers' expectations have changed dramatically from the personalization, the convenience that they seek, and the value that they seek. But that's not necessarily all new. This has been happening for the last, I would say, couple of decades, an approach towards that area. And the changes that we see are basically accelerated, right? So you see digital and e-com behavior with new users coming in on those platforms, and the way they're starting to use even groups that in the past were a bit shy of using these platforms. Older age groups or low-income age groups are now getting online. So it's not necessarily completely new and completely changed. It's just more of the same trends that we've seen, just accelerated. So really what we're doing is building more partnerships in data sharing and co-invention. We're continually investing in data to augment what we know about our context of shoppers in store and consumers and their behavior. So basically, to answer your question, it's really an acceleration that we see. We are accelerating as well in our investments and our data sets, and just understanding that consumer and shopper in a better way.
Okay, interesting thoughts there, Rafiq. Let me now go over to Sudhakar. Sudhakar, what are your views in shift in customer behavior during and after pandemic? For example, you work in a bank, in terms of the requirements to come to the bank, or let's say if anything about the retail industry as well, for example, the shopping machines. And how has that shifted, and how is data analytics helping you understand this better?
Yeah, okay. First of all, good morning to everyone. I work for National Bank of Kuwait as Chief Data Officer, and NBK is in 15 countries. And obviously, in terms of the pandemic impact, just like any other industry, banks went through a rough time last year, and obviously the profits and revenues were down. But now again, things have started to pick up the pandemic. Now, coming to in terms of the customer behavior, obviously the pandemic has forced all organizations to go digital, because if you just think or look back at 1 year, then the countries all came to a standstill, right? People were not able to get out of their homes. The banks, for example, we had to shut down the branches, or in some cases, keep the only few branches open in the entire country, 5 or 6 branches open. Staff could not come into the branches at all, right? So what it forced, I think just as Rafiq mentioned, is it sort of fast-tracked the whole digital journey, right? There was no option to say, okay, come into the branch. So what it meant was that how do you support the customers remotely? How do you handhold them? How do you make sure, because there are many customers who earlier were coming into the branches but could not come in anymore, correct? So from a data perspective, what has happened from a behavioral perspective as well is how do you engage the customers real time? How do you still keep yourself at the top of the mind of the customer and make their journey smoother? So it meant that, for example, if there's an account opening, we really had to fast track and then say, just you can open accounts remotely using your national card. So which meant you integrate with your digital IDs, your facial recognition, and are able to do a KYC remotely. You can do your mortgage applications remotely, for example, right? So this whole thing really kicked in where the customers pushed in a way, or the regulators even pushed for going digital. So from a data perspective, I think ingesting all this data that is coming in, making sure that integrating with the external agencies to be able to provide it, I think has become pretty big. Lastly, I would say one thing is one of the biggest challenges for banks from a customer perspective has been the defaults, right? In terms of you need to be able to predict which customers will be able to pay or not able to pay. The governments also have started to give waivers, loan waivers, interest waivers. So I think trying to look at what are the default predictive models to be able to see where the customer's behavior would be also has become pretty big in this pandemic and post-pandemic too. Because I think we are still in a recovery phase. It might take about a year at least before we all get back to normal.
Okay, thank you for that, Sudhakar. In both the views that we heard from Rafiq and Sudhakar, there is a certain mention of the external data sources in terms of combining the views from outside the organization and taking that into account in terms of decision making as organizations proceed toward data analytics. Arun, let me come to you. How important are the external data sources for your business? And in the recent times, has your outlook towards incorporating external data sources in your decision making, has that changed?
Yeah, thank you, Shailesh. Good morning to everyone. To answer your question, as a telecom industry, data is very critical. External data sources, primary data sources of your existing customers. The biggest thing that you always need to look out from an industry like telecom is to understand churn and be able to predict it and to retain your, customer base. Now, before pandemic or post-pandemic, two things which have been very predominant is the ability to serve anything to a customer in a digital format. Try to have lesser dependencies on people walking into the stores, make the offers more lucrative, serve whatever is required from a customer standpoint in a more digital manner. I think that has been the overall pitch across businesses, across different countries. With respect to that, we see that there has been a lot of, I would say, focus on understanding the whole customer journey and customer experience on your channels. So when we look at the channels, whether it is your web or app or even some of your digital front-ending channels, you need to really understand who exactly is your prospect, who is your customer, and if it is a prospect, how do you exactly take the data from that prospect perspective and you can turn that in your favor to make them as a customer. When it comes to customer, you need to take again or focus on all the aspects of data that is provided, any external data sources, to understand whether this customer is going to be churning out or whether this customer is going to be retained in. Do you have capabilities to upsell anything for them? I think that's where the whole aspect of data, external and internal, that plays a very critical role. Now, again, in the industry, it's very competitive. So you always need to look out for external factors in terms of data which is provided by market research companies. You need to have an understanding how your competitors are faring, what kind of product is coming out from there, how exactly are they focusing on enhancing a customer experience, how can you as a service provider outbeat the competition. So that's another source of data that you always need to keep tabs on. I believe that's where you will have to focus in getting multiple different streams of external data. The other predominant data set that you would like to see is social media. Today, every person, right from high school until they are 60, 65 or retired professionals, they have their social profiles. And today we are very, very upfront in terms of sharing our experiences, whether it is a good customer experience, a bad customer experience, or in general, experiences that are shared on social media or through some blogs where people comment on that. So you need to take those also as a source of data to really understand what we call or define within the analytics industry as voice of customer. So this, according to me, is a critical focus in terms of using external data sources for better understanding of your customer base and developing analytics on top of it.
That's really good perspective shared there, Arun. Let me ask the same question that I went to Sudhakar with, slightly differently though. In your industry, has the changing customer behavior during and post pandemic, has that impacted the demand pattern and business forecast for the demand? And what is your approach within data analytics to capture this variation in demand?
If I can jump in here, if it's open. So
you can surely jump the queue.
Yeah. If it's, I wasn't sure if the question is addressed for someone or if it's open, but I can just share quickly perspective from PepsiCo. So think of the last year. We are all dramatically changed our lifestyles, right? Including how we secure and consume food and beverages. Globally, it's estimated that 35%. And by the way, this market is like $2.5 trillion of food and beverage habits have been unended. So leaving these occasions up for grabs. So really, things have changed dramatically. Now, how do you deal with this? Is it going to continue? Is it going to be reset? Data is definitely helping us understand how consumers and shoppers are changing. It's important to understand that at the end of the day, we're human, and consumers might go back to that need for going back to where we used to be, the interactions we had before, etc. But I don't think this will change 100% back to what we used to call normal, right? There is a new normal, and data is indicating that, and consumers have experienced the convenience and the practicality and the value they get from the transformation that we saw.
Okay. Any other panelists who would like to contribute to the question around the shift in customer demand pattern and how's analytics helping us understand this better and react to this in a better fashion?
Yeah, I may, if I can contribute a couple of points. So one of the key aspects that you see is the growing digital transformation across industries and verticals. No matter the pandemic or not, but I think the digital transformation as a process was already set. And we have been seeing in the last decade, many of the companies have embraced digital transformation. But during the phase of the pandemic, there has been a larger push, which has accelerated this whole concept of digitally transforming companies. So as a part of the digital transformation process, the businesses have started looking more digital first, mobile first approach from a channel perspective. The second aspect is you have been trying to integrate more and more analytical frameworks on the channels itself to understand your customer behavior. And that's a trigger point to understand what exactly your customer experiences are, what exactly the customer journeys have been, at what point of a customer journey can you reach out to a customer and offer your services in a better manner. The whole point of analytics, I think, in the opening presentation by Piyush Chauhan, he was mentioning about serving data faster at a much rapid pace, and also serving data on the edge systems. I think that's the focus of analytics today, where you don't want to depend on data from even yesterday and you want to take a particular prediction. You want all your data to be analyzed in real time, and you want to make insights out of it in real time, take actions in real time. And that's where the whole paradigm shift has been in this industry, where there are processes which can really fetch data faster, analyze data faster, and serve data in much real time. Now, the impact to analytics is that the decisions which were taken over a period of weeks or maybe a month, now we have accelerated that decision making process. Even the channels which are offering products, you can scale some of those products in real time. Just to give you an example, if you look at Virgin Mobile, for example, within this region, you can create your own product type of how many minutes you want, how much of data do you want, whatever it is, and you can scale it up or down based on your preferences. I think this is exactly where the understanding of data points and customer behavior have been correlated very well. And I believe whether it is a bank or even PepsiCo as an industry, everyone is trying to make that particular change as a part of their digital transformation exercise, and taking data in, enabling analytics to give those decision making power to the end user or customer, so as to see that there is better loyalty, better retention, and that you have your customer base intact and growing.
I think, okay, let me also chip in. I think very good points, Rafiq and Arun. From a banking perspective, one of the things possible I would like to add is that something good that has happened even in the pandemic in a way was the customers possibly trusted a lot in established banks. Because somebody who have been coming to the branch, etc., they're sitting at home, they felt more comfortable in banking with the next door bank. That's possibly something that. But other thing that has also happened is many of the customers now want to know their spending habits, want to set their savings goals, because one of the key things that has happened in the pandemic was obviously many were struggling to see, might have lost their jobs or not, or gone on furlough and whatever are the other reasons, right? So it's suddenly became that they're not looking at the bank as just, okay, they go and deposit and collect, etc. But it is the bank should help the customers to be able to track their savings, their spending habits. That's become a big focus for, our bank as well as most of the other banks as well. And I think that's a big change. That's from a retail perspective. If you look at corporate perspective, it's again a different thing altogether, right? Because most of the corporates also were struggling for their liquidity positions, where the cash flows come in. So it is trying to help the corporate customers to say, how can the banks chip in to be able to predict their cash flows and be able to help them with the project financing or the cash flow part that is there with corporates. So I think banks played, in my view, if you notice pandemic, actually banks have come out quite resilient, unlike the 2008 financial crisis, etc. And I also have seen that the governments relied quite a lot on the banking sector to be able to help them get out of this pandemic economically. So I think all in all, banks, I think, have done well, but the customer demand for banks stepping in to help them in this pandemic, I think has gone up substantially after that.
Good. Thanks for that.
Actually, it's just a term that we implemented or say in our company. We are a technology company that gives big data analytics platform, and I'm positive on all the things that you've said before, and also what Pierce said in the beginning. But we actually call it TTTI, which is total time to insight, meaning from the data or from the time the data has been generated until you get the analytical insight in today's market and in today's data booming market, getting this as fast as you can. This is a metric that we think many organizations should be implementing inside, which is TTTI, total time to insight. From the point it was generated until you get the data particle was generated until the actual insight is given in the report or whatever. And that all across the data warehouse or data mart or data lake or whatever you use. This is something that you need to think about, how to accelerate all of this activity in order to streamline and provide much faster and agile business decisions based on what my predecessors have been saying.
Thanks for those thoughts, Avi. In fact, my next question to you was on the same lines as well. And Arun also mentioned quite a few times the word that he used specifically was real time. And we need to generate the insights real time, we need to action in real time, and we need to manage the customer experience in real time. So let's hear your thoughts in more detail in terms of what role technology can play in supporting analytics teams and businesses against this growing demand of intelligence at speed. And I will use the terminology that you use, TTTI, triple TI rather. Total time to insight. I added another T, I guess. So total time to insights. What this metric should be for the businesses? Is it in minutes or seconds or days? What should be the benchmark for this in your experience? And what role technology can play? The broader question is what role technology can play in terms of enabling analytics teams and businesses to get this intelligence at speed?
Yes, thank you for the question. First of all, regarding the metrics, everything is relevancy here, meaning it's relational or whatever you are using today versus what you want to use in the next phase. What we think is that it's critical for organizations to accelerate the rate, as I said, of the TTTI to get the insight. The data is generated depending which organizations, but the data flow is quite, let's say, it's not identical, but the structure is there. If you're a telecom or a banking or manufacturing, you have the sources of the information that are coming of the data, whether these are from the telco environments, the switches or whatever, or the banking sector where you have the customer data or the transactional data and the manufacturing and so forth. So you have the data that is generated. And as we know today, much more data is generated in factors than it was a few years ago because of the nature of data and because of COVID and because of many other reasons. Now, all these data is being fused throughout the organization, typically through data processing and long processing activities, what you call ETLs. And then they are stored in whatever repository that you have, and then being analyzed by the end users, which are analysts or data scientists or whatever others that are doing that. Today, the bottlenecks that you see are not probably the data generation and the data storage itself, because mankind has been very good in generating a lot of data and storing it, okay? But accessing this data efficiently and not doing very long pre-processing for the analytics is a big challenge that you see today with all the organizations actually that we talk with. The long ETLs, the complex joins and selections that you're doing, and the need for a lot of experience and knowledge from your people that are doing that. So actually, this long processes, you need to streamline and accelerate that. From our perspective, from technology-wise, if you know how to accelerate that, and if you implement the right technology tools, you can reach today, and the tools that people are using today are typical Hadoops. The modern guys are typical Hadoops, typical appliances, Exadata, Teradata, and so forth, are things that take a lot of time. Now, if you are able to accelerate that, and this is what actually our technology vision there is, doing it in a parallel processing in a GPU architecture, you can reach on every count that you do something like 5 to 10 times faster. If you are having a long process of doing reporting in a bank, a regulatory reporting that takes 1 day, you can accelerate into half the time of that. If you have a long ETL that takes 15 hours, you want to accelerate that. You look at the parts of the organization or the parts of the data warehouse that are slow, and you accelerate them. Touch them one by one, as Piyush said in the first presentation. And don't do a big revolution, but work one by one on the big bottlenecks that you have, or in the, let's say, greatest bottlenecks that you have in your organizations. This is from our side.
Thanks for that, Avi. I guess all the panelists that we have on the panel today, they have certain degree of maturity in their own data analytics efforts in terms of bringing the time to insights, or total time to insights. I forgot one word again. So total time to insights, as well as taking it to another level. We heard the new normal word during the pandemic quite a few times. I think, Rafiq, you also mentioned during your first views about shifting demand pattern and the customer behavior. The way the customer interact with the business has definitely changed, and it's completely changed significantly for a lot of businesses. My question to all the panelists is, what are views? Is this a temporary or a permanent shift?
If I may present my views here.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So very nice, Avi, to know there is a new KPI, TTI, total time to insights. But yeah, to answer your question, Shailesh, as I have been, very dominantly mentioning in my inputs to this panel, there has been a paradigm shift to take everything more digital. And this trend is going to stay. Now, people who have been very much used to more of brick and mortar, going into a certain store, trying to get services, standing in long queues and trying to get themselves served, has changed from both a mindset perspective and an expectation perspective. So the customer today wants to have access to any product and service at a breakneck speed. Now everything needs to happen, quickly. I wouldn't use the word real time again, because let's leave it for analytics and delivery of insights. But the expectation and mindset changes of customers definitely needs to be catered well by the business verticals. And if we see, the business verticals are also embracing that particular change, which is more of a customer centricity, and everything that a business is trying to do is more around the customer. Okay, I think that's one of the biggest change. And post pandemic, and in this new normal, where work from home is more or less becoming a kind of a part of our day-to-day work culture, or flexible work hours, you will see that many of the service industries which are catering to us as working professionals, whether it be your day-to-day laundry services, food delivery, or you going out and eating food, or you buying any products, for yourself or lifestyle, everything is becoming more and more digital. So today, especially in a country like Dubai, where everything is served to you on a platter, literally, you would like to somehow have that kind of a expectation from businesses, whether it is telecom as a vertical, whether it is retail as a vertical, or banks. The expectation and the mindset, which have changed to a more digital embracement, will definitely be having this impact even in the next few years to come. Or I think there will be still some better shift maybe, you know, to start using more wearable technology, which can start doing this than depending on your phone, or we don't know. I mean, especially with the technology that is changing every 5 years now very rapidly.
Okay. Rafiq,
let me add to that. I think, yeah, so I think everyone possibly is saying the same message, right? That the change is sort of permanent, that the move towards digital has got fast-tracked. That's all that has happened, I guess, in the pandemic. And I think rightly saying the shift also has happened more towards how do you get real-time insights into the customer's behavior. I think connecting the two, one of the things that many organizations are also working out is how do I make use of, for example, a geolocation? How can I make correct offers, right offers to the customer based on their spending habits, for example, right? So I think it's the same journey for many to be able to fast track in terms of the digital part of it. Now, I want to bring in another aspect to this whole pandemic thing, right? Is what also has helped us quite a lot is I think the focus has shifted for getting better models into saying we need to now ensure that all customers can be reachable, right? So the data quality related to the customers has gone up significantly. Because previously, maybe there were other ways of reaching out. Now, I think there was a time when you couldn't reach maybe some customers and you wanted to ensure whether their mobile numbers are accurate, whether their email IDs are accurate, etc. Right? That's the other thing that I see from a bank perspective. Suddenly, okay, I mean, don't take any of the key data elements lightly, right? Force on them. But I think what it required quite a lot is about educating the customers and handholding the customers through this, especially from a banking perspective. Many were afraid of the cybersecurity, many were afraid of the frauds, and a lot of effort from a data perspective we had to put in to make sure that there are enough controls, there are enough protection that is offered as well. It is not so much as from a customer behavior perspective, but it is more about once you get all customers digital, from a data perspective, how do I ensure it's good quality? How do I ensure it is secure? That focus also has become pretty high for the banking sector. I'm sure it is possibly the same in other organizations too. So I wanted to just bring in additional points, possibly not entirely linked into the customer behavior per se.
I can also jump in. Thank you for that. I love, by the way, the different perspectives you're getting from different industries, banking, telecom, in different industries. So I'll share a slightly different perspective. So we are still human. By the way, we had a long weekend this last weekend. I was out in the mall, and you can see people are flooding back to what we call traditional brick and mortar, right? So it's not that things have changed and not going back. There are still experiences that humans crave, experiencing in all 5 senses, looking for that opportunity to be out and interact with the experience they used to have. Let's talk about groceries and food and beverage specifically. There is still a huge opportunity for traditional food and beverage retail. It's not all going to digital. Think of the weather is getting better, barbecue season, consumers want to go out and experience that purchase for that occasion, right? Or fresh fruit and vegetable, or having a get-together in a community. So what I'm basically saying is digital has not satisfied all the needs that consumers have. There are different consumer segments and there are different consumer occasions. And traditional will still have a significant role to play and even maybe amplify. What consumers have now, or shoppers have experienced, is convenience, is value, is transparency. And that is something that traditional will have to really play a much bigger part to amplify in store.
Okay, fantastic. When I asked this question about the is this shift temporary or permanent, I thought that was a trick question from my side, because look, as a data analytics team, consumer pattern has always been shifting. There is nothing new. Yeah, and our job is to understand that pattern and enable the business to react to that shifting behavior, shifting pattern. I think let me share my perspective as well from retail, definitely, and other industries too. I think we are in a unique situation now, which has never occurred before, where it's not just we are trying to understand as to what this shift is. In fact, even the customer is not aware as to where they're going to be, what their behavior is going to be, whether it's going to be purely online, purely offline, it's going to be hybrid, how much is going to be online, how much is going to be brick and mortar, etc. They are still trying to figure out. With the regulations in many countries around social distancing norms, as well as store opening hours as well, as well as mask everything, all those exist. And hence, customer is also shifting their behavior extremely rapidly. So hence, while the job of the data analytics largely remain the same in terms of understanding, I guess we'll go back to the previous word TTTI or real time in terms of the demand on the analytics teams to understand that pattern in a short frame of time has increased significantly. Use the shorter amount of history, not the longer history, shorter amount of history, as well as predict it for the shorter period of time as opposed to predicting it for 6 months to 12 months. Now, with that thought, let me move on to my next question. We will, or a lot of people have called this as agile way of analytics. Yeah, and given that a certain degree of uncertainty still exists, what do you think, how important it is for your businesses? And Avi, I would like to hear your thoughts as well, in terms of how important is it to adopt the agile way of analytics today? And what should be a business approach to agile analytics?
So thank you for the question. As we discussed regarding the agile analytics and the previous sentences and discussions that was here, the issue is that you would like to get, as I think, at least from our perspective, as much information as you can and analyze, whether this is in a short-term information or much longer-term information, meaning getting more dimensions of the data. Because as every customer and every client works digitally, probably more dimensions are there. And in order to get agile, you need also to make it faster, but also to look at more data particles and be able to analyze them both in all the data science that you do, whether this is AI or ML, and also be capable of working on the original data with much less pre-processing that you can. So you can pour into the data lake or to whatever you want the source information, and be capable of doing the analytics on this information almost as in its raw form. This would, and in many dimensions that you can think about. And this would enable to, at least to our opinion, to be much more agile, because you will be able to create, and of course, agility is important. Agility and nimble of your systems and everything. So you would like to be able not to adhere to the old rigid formats that you had with the data structures and the columnar databases and everything, but be able to pull directly the raw data in order for your ad hoc querying. And this is something that could increase and would enable much more agility from the data scientists or the decision makers. So this is from our perception about this question.
Okay. Are there any other views from any of the participants, panelists rather?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, maybe let me chip in. I think I do hear what Avi is saying. if you look at analytics, right, one of the things that possibly we're still struggling with in a way is to say what kind of business assumptions or business decisions are required to be made and what data is required for it. Because a lot of the analytics also depends on how the business is able to think and then able to say, okay, this is possibly what outcome I'm looking for, right? And then you can work backwards to say, okay, at least this is what are required. And I think we possibly still have some way to go, in my view, in educating or making people think differently, right? To say, because in terms of a data-driven decision making, I've seen where you spend a lot of money, come up with various assumptions, and the business doesn't know what to do with those hypotheses. It's the other way around as well. So I think there's an education that has to happen, or possibly a change in the mindset thinking from a business perspective that is required. That's one thing that I would say. Obviously, there are two parts to agile analytics, as I would say. One is our ability to react quickly to what the business needs and are able to put things together. But there's also a concept around, let's forget the business decision. I have a data set. Let me see what I can make use of it. So it's entirely data availability perspective. I have this data, what can I do with it, right? I think that's possibly applicable in some cases, but majority, I would think, is something that if we are able to improve on the decision-making abilities or ability to come up with different hypotheses and different assumptions, I think that will definitely improve the data and analytics ability to react much quicker and be able to provide more agile analytics. That is my view. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'm sure there are quite a few more views from the other panelists as well, but I'm conscious that there are of the time, as well as there are three interesting questions that have come from the participants, and I would like to touch upon those as well. The first one is from Neil from Nielsen IQ, and his question is, post-pandemic, the shift of the consumer dynamics across business channels may sometime require channel-specific data strategies to adapt to the new landscape. And how has your organization been able to prioritize where to focus and what? I think we did cover this in various ways during our views on the customer shift in the customer behavior, etc. But I think from the business channel data perspective, channel specific data perspective, anybody want to share their views?
Shailesh, I can answer that, and I think it also goes to the question we were trying to cover on being agile. It all starts with having the right data sets and feeding it in the right way, that you're able to use it on a continuous and dynamic way versus one-off connections that you need to continue to renew. I'll give you a couple of examples of what we're doing at PepsiCo. We have a data foundation called Store DNA, or we call it SDNA, and another one, Consumer DNA or CDNA. These are foundational data sets that we're using to unlock granular growth. Think of SDNA as basically integrating everything we know about outlets that sell our products or can potentially sell our products, including factors like the footfall in the outlets, shopper reviews, local points of interest around the store. Imagine if it's a store that's in a business district versus in a residential district. And internal factors like what the store format looks like and what kind of sales and execution data that has. And CDNA is similar for basically the consumer who buy our product. So including their social and demographics, likelihood to shop in a certain retailer or brand, and interests and media. Once you have those data platforms and you build those connections, and the aim is, again, to move from doing this in a one-off kind of position to an ongoing, always on dynamic data sets. You can then apply all the use cases that you need on those data sets in a very fast way.
Okay, fabulous. I have another question. It's actually a very, very interesting question. Is there one innovation in insights and analytics that each of the panelists are proud about, which have been implemented in their organization in the very recent past? This is from Pradeep, who's from Dubai Islamic Insurance.
Yeah, I would like to take it up. And what I would like to tell is there is one innovation, if we can see, is the customer reach out. And the more particular aspect in this customer reach out is personalization. If we remember, the personalization in our communication channels used to be either first name, last name, but now you can personalize content, and that too in real time, whether it is an email, whether it is your digital presence on social media, or whatever your digital touch point is. We have been able to reach to a level where we can say it is hyper personalization, micro segmentation, and targeting people from different segments in a very personalized fashion, and making your entire product offering which is more related to their aspirations. I think that is one innovation. I'm sure each one of the industry verticals would agree to this point, that they have worked in this particular direction, which is enhancing your entire customer value life cycle, or you see how you are looking at the KPI of customer loyalty metrics. So this is one area which is personalization to a level where it is not just about your first name, last name, but it is more about content, but it is more about your product offerings, which are very tailored to a person's specific needs. And one point on the agility.
I'll have to cut you short. I have Musin here as a time police. Very quickly, Rafiq, in 20 seconds, anything you're proud of, and then I'll go to Sudhakar and Evi as well.
I talked about some of what we did already, but another area is think of the spend that we have in PepsiCo in marketing, and we've developed our own internal what we call an ROI engine, and that's all on a data platforms to help us get better and more efficient in how we spend. So I know this is very top line, but I don't think time permits to go in much more detail.
Yeah. Quickly
Sure.
to say,
anything you guys want to?
Okay, quickly, I think from our organization perspective, one of the things that has been noticed in the pandemic is that customers really didn't know where to spend. So the deposits actually started to grow up. Obviously, that's one good or bad thing that's happened. But from a win-win situation perspective, what we had to focus quickly is on propensity models, right? To be able to say, okay, for this customer, this is a alternative that we can give in terms of investments, etc. So some of these really had to be fine-tuned. I think going back to what Arun said, sort of customized to the customer. That's what I would say we're proud of from our organization perspective.
Okay. Any last thoughts there, Ravi?
Yeah, from my side, I would like to, we are very proud of the, let's say, the technology that we developed in order to enable this fast track analytics, the agile, having things as close to real time as possible is the capability or the technology that we developed that is running on a GPU machines, which are actually thousands of cores on a single processor. Running the SQLs or running the queries and being able to split this query or very complicated queries and processes along these GPUs is the, let's say, the heart of what we developed and what we achieved, and this is we're very, very proud of. And this enables the whole what we talked, and also from, let's say, green perspective or replacing hundreds of servers with only 2, this is something that we are proud, because we look at it at a very holistic approach, and we enable the customers doing whatever they want to do faster, quicker, more dimensions, and this is what we are proud of, and we are providing it to the market.
Thanks for that, Avi. Personally, I'm proud of a lot of things that we've implemented, but quite recently, I'm very proud of hosting this panel, moderating this panel with my amazing co-panelist. And I'm sure we cannot end this discussion. It's a very, very long discussions, and there are a lot of views to share. But this is what we could capture in the limited time. Muhsin, over to you.
Thanks a lot. So it was really amazing. I really loved this panel discussion. Thanks a lot, everybody.